The 764. Problem. When criminals steal our symbols. Introduction. Alright. Let's talk about something that's been making headlines this week. And honestly, it's making my blood boil. Not because it's surprising, we've seen this pattern before, but because it's the same exhausting cycle playing out again. And we're the ones who suffer for it. November 14th, 2025. New Jersey. Federal agents arrested a 21-year-old named Marek Cherkawy on cyber-stalking charges. He's allegedly connected to something called the 764 network. And if you haven't heard of 764 yet, buckle up, because this is going to be a deep dive into one of the most frustrating problems facing our community right now. This isn't just about one arrest. This is about a pattern of criminal misappropriation of satanic imagery that's been damaging legitimate practitioners for decades. This is about how the media, law enforcement, and the public consistently fail to distinguish between religious practice and criminal activity. And this is about why we, as a decentralized community, struggle to fight back against these false associations. So let's break this down. What is 764? Why does it matter to us? And what the hell do we do about it? What is 764? First, let's be absolutely clear about what 764 actually is, because this matters. 764 is a criminal network that operates primarily online. They target minors, children, and teenagers for exploitation, extortion, psychological abuse, and in some cases, they coerce victims into self-harm or harming others. They use social media platforms, gaming communities, Discord servers, anywhere young people congregate online. Their tactics are predatory and systematic. They identify vulnerable targets, usually kids who are isolated, dealing with mental health issues, looking for community online. They build trust. They gather compromising information or images. And then they use that material to extort and control their victims. The FBI has been tracking this network for years now. They classify 764 as nihilistic violent extremists, not a religious organization, not a cult in any traditional sense, a criminal enterprise engaged in systematic child exploitation. As of right now, there are over 250 active federal investigations related to 764 activity. Multiple arrests have been made across the United States and internationally. This is a serious law enforcement priority. And here's where it connects to us. 764 uses satanic imagery extensively. Pentagrams, inverted crosses, demonic names and sigils, Baphomet imagery, occult aesthetics, the whole package. Members adopt names like Lucifer, Demon, Satan. They use satanic symbolism in their communications. They frame their activities in occult language, talking about rituals and sacrifices and dark powers. And when the media covers these arrests, when true crime YouTubers make their videos, when concerned parent groups sound the alarm, how do they describe it? Satanic cult, devil worshippers preying on children, demonic online predators. You see the problem, the media narrative. Let me show you how this plays out in practice. When Marek Cherkawy was arrested last week, the news coverage was immediate. Local New Jersey outlets picked it up. National news mentioned it. And what language did they use? Satanic imagery, cult-like behavior, demonic symbolism. Some reports literally called 764 a satanic cult. Full stop. No qualifiers. No distinction between religious practice and criminal appropriation of religious symbols. True crime content creators are even worse. There are YouTube videos with titles like The Satanic Internet Cult Destroying Lives, and Inside the Demonic Predator Network, and Devil Worshippers Targeting Your Children. These videos get millions of views. They shape public perception, and they never make the distinction between legitimate Satanism and criminal activity that borrows satanic aesthetics. The comment sections are predictable. This is what Satanism leads to. Devil worship always ends in harm. Anyone who identifies as satanic is dangerous. And when actual Satanists try to push back, try to explain that these are criminals misappropriating our symbols, not practitioners of any legitimate tradition, we get dismissed. You're defending child predators. All Satanism is evil. There's no such thing as good devil worship. It's a PR nightmare, and it's one we can't effectively combat because of how our community is structured, or rather, how it's not structured. Why this isn't Satanism. Let me be absolutely crystal clear about something. 764 is not Satanism, not theistic Satanism, not LaVeyan Satanism, not Luciferianism, not demonolatry, not any legitimate form of left-hand path practice. How do I know? Because law enforcement says so. The FBI, which has done extensive investigation into this network, classifies them as nihilistic, violent extremists, not religious practitioners, not a genuine belief system, criminals using shocking imagery for effect. Think about it logically. What are the actual goals and activities of 764? Exploiting children, extorting victims, causing psychological harm, coercing self-harm and violence. These aren't religious activities. These aren't rituals with spiritual purpose. These are crimes. The satanic imagery is window dressing. It serves multiple functions for the criminals involved. First, it's shocking. It gets attention. It makes them feel edgy and powerful. It's the aesthetic of transgression without any of the philosophical depth. Second, it helps recruit certain vulnerable individuals who are drawn to dark imagery, who feel alienated from mainstream society, who mistake shock value for authenticity. Third, it intimidates victims. When you're a scared 14-year-old being threatened by someone using demonic imagery and talking about rituals and sacrifices, that's terrifying. The occult aesthetics amplify the psychological control. Fourth, it provides cover. When members get caught, they can claim religious persecution. They can say, "We're just Satanists expressing our beliefs," as a defense. But none of this has anything to do with actual satanic practice. Let me tell you what actual Satanism involves. LaVeyan Satanism is a philosophical system emphasizing individualism, self-preservation, rational self-interest, and rejection of arbitrary authority. It explicitly opposes harming children and non-consenting victims. It's about personal empowerment, not victimizing others. Theistic Satanism involves devotional relationships with entities understood as Satan, Lucifer, or various demons. It includes meditation, ritual work, prayer, offerings, spiritual development. Practitioners develop ethical frameworks based on their relationships with these entities. The idea that these entities would endorse child exploitation is absurd to anyone who actually works with them. Luciferianism focuses on enlightenment, knowledge, self-liberation, and personal transformation. It's explicitly about breaking mental chains and achieving higher consciousness. Nothing about that philosophy supports or encourages harming others. Demonolatry is devotional practice working with specific demonic entities, building relationships, honoring them, seeking their wisdom and assistance. It's structured, disciplined, spiritual work. All of these traditions have ethical frameworks. All of them have philosophical foundations. All of them distinguish between what is and isn't acceptable behavior. And absolutely none of them endorse, encourage, or involve child exploitation, extortion, psychological abuse, or coerced violence. 764 isn't a corruption of Satanism. It's not Satanism taken too far. It's not what happens when you worship the devil. It's criminals borrowing symbols they think are scary and using them as tools of manipulation. It's as much Satanism as a gang member with a cross tattoo represents Christianity. The historical pattern. Here's what makes this so frustrating. This isn't new. This is a pattern that repeats over and over again, and we never seem to break the cycle. Let's go back to the 1980s and early 1990s. The Satanic Panic. Therapists using recovered memory techniques convinced patients they'd been ritually abused by satanic cults. Prosecutors brought cases claiming organized networks of Satanists were kidnapping children for sacrifice. Daycare workers were accused of elaborate ritual abuse. It was all fabricated. Not one single case was proven. Not one organized satanic cult engaging in criminal activity was ever found. The FBI investigated extensively and concluded there was no evidence of widespread satanic crime networks. But the damage was done. Innocent people went to prison. Satanists, the real, practicing, law-abiding kind, faced discrimination, lost custody of children, lost jobs. The public believed Satanists were dangerous criminals, and that belief persisted for decades. Then we have the Order of Nine Angles 09A. This is a fascist occult group founded in the UK in the 1960s that combines Nazi ideology with satanic aesthetics. They've been connected to terrorism, hate crimes, and violence. And the media coverage? Satanic terror group, Nazi Satanists. Never mind that legitimate satanic organizations universally condemn 09A. Never mind that most Satanists want nothing to do with fascism. The association is made, and it sticks. More recently, we've had various criminal cases where the perpetrator happened to own the Satanic Bible or had a pentagram tattoo, or listened to black metal. And how does the media cover it? Satanic influences, devil worship drove them to violence. It doesn't matter that millions of people own the Satanic Bible and never commit crimes. It doesn't matter that pentagrams are religious symbols worn by peaceful practitioners. It doesn't matter that black metal is just music. Once the satanic connection is made, that's the story. And now we have 764, another criminal enterprise appropriating our symbols, another wave of media coverage conflating criminals with practitioners, another round of public panic about satanic predators. The pattern is exhausting and predictable. Why we can't effectively fight back? So here's the question everyone asks. Why don't Satanists do something about this? Why don't we issue statements, hold press conferences, correct the record? The answer is simple and frustrating. We can't. Not effectively. Because of how our community is structured, or rather, how it isn't. We're decentralized. There's no satanic Vatican. There's no central authority that speaks for all Satanists. The Church of Satan speaks for Levians, who are members of that organization. The Temple of Set speaks for Setians. Individual theistic practitioners speak for themselves, but there's no unified voice. When the Satanic Temple, which I'm not covering in this series, makes news, they can issue press releases because they're an organized activist group with spokespeople. But theistic Satanism doesn't work that way. We're individuals and small groups. We don't have press offices. Most of us are private practitioners. We're not public figures. Many of us are closeted for professional or family reasons. We can't step forward as spokespeople, even if we wanted to. We're diverse and often disagree with each other. Demonolators, Luciferians, traditional Satanists, chaos magicians, working with demonic currents. We don't have unified beliefs or practices. So who would speak for us? What would they even say that represents all of us? We're small. The total number of practicing theistic Satanists globally is probably in the thousands, maybe low tens of thousands. We don't have the resources or organizing capacity for major PR campaigns. And honestly, a lot of us don't want to be public. We value the underground, transgressive, initiatory nature of left-hand path work. We're not trying to be mainstream or acceptable. Public advocacy feels antithetical to the path itself. All of this means that when 764 gets called a satanic cult, we have no effective mechanism to push back. We can't hold a press conference. We can't buy billboard space. We can't organize a coordinated response. Individual practitioners can write blog posts, make videos like this one, try to educate people in our immediate circles. But we are drowned out by mainstream media narratives, true crime sensationalism, and decades of cultural conditioning that says satanic, dangerous criminal. It's like trying to bail out a flooding boat with a teaspoon. You can do it, but you're not stopping the flood. The real-world impact. Let me tell you what this actually costs us, because it's not just abstract PR problems. This has real consequences for real people. Employment discrimination. People have lost jobs when employers discovered they were Satanists, and when the news is full of stories about satanic predators, that discrimination gets worse. Why would an employer want to take the risk? Custody battles. Satanic parents have lost custody of their children or had custody challenged because the other parent or family services argued their religion made them unfit parents. When satanic cult is in the news, those arguments become more effective. Housing discrimination. Landlords have refused to rent to known Satanists. Neighbors have organized campaigns to force satanic residents out. When your religion is associated with child exploitation, people don't want you in their community. Social isolation. People lose friends, become estranged from family, face harassment and threats when their satanic identity becomes known. And stories like 764 make that worse because it confirms people's fears. Violence. Satanists have been physically attacked. Property has been vandalized. Threats have been made. When the public believes Satanists are dangerous criminals, some people decide to protect their community through vigilante action. This is the real cost of criminal misappropriation of our symbols. It's not just annoying. It's genuinely harmful to practitioners who are just trying to live their lives and practice their spirituality in peace. What we can actually do. So what's the solution? What can we actually do about this? First, education. Content like this video. Blog posts, essays, books, academic work. Any platform where we can explain what legitimate Satanism actually involves. Where we can distinguish between religious practice and criminal appropriation of religious symbols. It's slow. It's labor-intensive. It doesn't get the reach that sensationalist media coverage gets, but it's what we have. Second, living visibly ethical lives. For those of us who are public about our practice, even just within our immediate circles, demonstrating through our actions that Satanists are ethical, productive members of society, being the counterexample to the stereotype. Third, supporting religious freedom advocacy more broadly. Organizations that fight for minority religious rights, that oppose discrimination based on religious belief, that push back against moral panic and scapegoating. When they win cases or change policies, we benefit even if we're not explicitly mentioned. Fourth, being precise in our own language. When we talk about our practice, being clear about what we do and don't believe, what we do and don't accept, not giving ammunition to people who want to conflate us with criminals. Fifth, not legitimizing or defending the indefensible. When something like 764 comes up, being absolutely clear, that's not us, that's not Satanism, those are criminals, and we condemn their actions. No equivocation. No, but maybe. Clear rejection. Sixth, building stronger community networks among legitimate practitioners, so that when something like this happens, we can at least support each other, share resources, coordinate our individual responses, even if we can't coordinate a collective response. It's not enough. It doesn't solve the problem, but it's what we can actually do given our structural limitations. The broader conversation we need to have. But I think there's a bigger question here that we, as a community, need to grapple with. Is our decentralization and privacy serving us, or is it making us vulnerable? On one hand, the underground nature of left-hand path practice is part of its power. The fact that we're not trying to be mainstream, that we're willing to embrace the outsider status, that we value transgression and rejection of social norms that's core to who we are. On the other hand, our invisibility makes us vulnerable to misrepresentation. Our lack of organization means we can't defend ourselves effectively. Our privacy means the only public face of Satanism that most people see is either activist organizations doing political stunts or criminals like 764. Is there a middle path? Can we maintain the essential character of left-hand path practice while also having some capacity for collective response when we're under attack? I don't know, and I think different practitioners will have different answers based on their own values and priorities. But 764 and cases like it force us to ask these questions. Because the status quo, where we're constantly dealing with false associations, where every criminal who uses our symbols damages our reputation, where we have no effective recourse, that status quo isn't great. Maybe some level of organization wouldn't compromise the path. Maybe selective visibility, being able to respond to attacks without constantly seeking attention, is possible. Or maybe the price of true left-hand path practice is always going to be misunderstanding and misrepresentation. Maybe that's part of the adversarial stance itself. Maybe we have to accept it as the cost of walking this path. These are the questions 764 raises for me. Not just, how do we respond to this specific case, but how do we function as a community in a world that consistently misunderstands and misrepresents us? Conclusion. The Marek Cherkawy arrest is just the latest in a long line of cases where criminals appropriate satanic imagery, and the rest of us pay the price. With over 250 active 764 investigations ongoing, we're going to see more arrests, more headlines, more satanic cult coverage in the coming months. And every time, we're going to have the same frustrating experience, watching media coverage conflate criminals with practitioners, seeing public opinion turn against us, dealing with the real-world consequences of that misrepresentation, and having limited ability to push back effectively. It's exhausting, it's demoralizing, and it's been going on for decades with no end in sight. But we keep practicing. We keep educating where we can. We keep living our lives according to our values. We keep building relationships with our entities. We keep walking the left-hand path, even when the world misunderstands what that means. Because this is our path. These are our symbols. This is our spirituality. And we're not going to let criminals and media sensationalism drive us away from it. But we also need to keep having honest conversations about our limitations, our vulnerabilities, and whether there are ways we can better protect ourselves and our community without compromising what makes this path meaningful. That's the 764 problem. It's not just about one criminal network. It's about the ongoing challenge of being a misunderstood, decentralized, minority religious community in a world that's all too ready to believe the worst about us. And it's a problem we're going to be dealing with for a long time to come. Stay informed, stay ethical, and maybe most importantly, stay strong, because this path was never going to be easy, and this is just one more challenge we face together, or as together as a decentralized community can be. Hail yourself, and don't let criminals define what we are.